Every year, thousands of people vanish in North America's parks, forests, and quiet suburbs. Most are found, but a small number of cases share unsettling details, disappearances that seem to defy logic, where tracks end abruptly, or people reappear with no memory of where they've been. Today, we'll explore 4 cases that sit on the edges of reason, strange, haunting, and not overexposed. These aren't urban legends or campfire tales. These are real people who simply disappeared. In February 1978, Steven Kubacki, a 23-year-old college student from Michigan, decided to go cross-country skiing near Lake Michigan. The weather was cold, but he was an experienced outdoorsman. When Steven didn't return, searchers traced his path across the snow until it simply stopped. His skis and backpack were found on the edge of the lake ice, and his footprints led onto the frozen surface. But they ended abruptly, as if he'd vanished mid-stride. There was no sign of broken ice, no hole, no drag marks. Authorities presumed he'd fallen to the ice and drowned, but when the lake thawed in spring, no body surfaced. Months passed, then a year, then 15 months, and suddenly, Steven came back. In May 1979, a man walked up to the door of his father's home in Massachusetts, hundreds of miles away. It was Steven. He looked healthy, coherent, even calm, but he had no memory of where he'd been. He told reporters he'd woken up in a meadow in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, wearing clothes that weren't his. He had a small backpack with maps inside, none belonging to him. Doctors found nothing wrong physically or mentally. Kubacki returned to college, earned advanced degrees, and rarely spoke of his disappearance again. When journalists tried to revisit the story years later, he declined every interview. To this day, no one knows where he was for those 15 months. Was it a psychological break? An accident followed by amnesia? Or something stranger? Some have tied his case to the so-called Michigan Triangle, an area of mysterious shipwrecks and aircraft vanishings in Lake Michigan. Steven Kubacki's reappearance raises a different question than most missing 411 stories. Not just where did he go, but why did he come back, with no recollection of the time in between. On February 24, 1978, just weeks after Kubacki vanished, 5 young men from Yuba City, California, disappeared on their way home from a college basketball game. They were known locally as the Yuba County Five: Bill Sterling, 29, Jack Madruga, 30, Ted Weher, 32, Jack Hewitt, 24, Gary Mathias, 25. All were part of a close-knit group of friends with mild intellectual disabilities. They loved sports, routines, and were excited for an upcoming Special Olympics trip. After the game in Chico, they stopped at a convenience store, bought snacks, and then vanished. Their car, a Mercury Montego, was found days later in the Plumas National Forest, far off their expected route. The keys were gone, but the car wasn't stuck. It could have been driven easily. There was fuel in the tank, food in the car, and no signs of struggle. Months later, as the snow melted, searchers made a grim discovery: the remains of 4 of the men. One, Ted Weher, was found inside a Ranger trailer nearly 20 miles from where the car was abandoned. He'd survived for some time, maybe weeks. Food inside the cabin had been partially eaten, but large supplies remained untouched. There was fuel, heavy clothing, bedding, even a fireplace. Yet Ted had starved and frozen to death. The others were found in the woods, miles away, scattered as if trying to find help. But the strangest part? Gary Mathias was never found. His shoes were inside the trailer, meaning he'd likely been there, but he was gone. No one knows why they drove into the mountains, or why they didn't use the supplies that could have saved them. Theories range from a wrong turn to foul play, or even something that frightened them into running blindly into the dark woods. 40+ years later, the Yuba County Five remain one of the most chilling, unsolved disappearance clusters in American history, a real-world mystery where logic seems to stop at the tree line. Fast forward to December 2009. Steven Koecher, 30, was a quiet, church-going man living in St. George, Utah. He'd lost his job months earlier but stayed optimistic, taking odd gigs and volunteering at his church. On December 13th, he left his apartment in his white Chevy Cavalier and drove roughly 120 miles southwest, across the desert, into Henderson, Nevada, near Las Vegas. Security cameras captured his car pulling into a residential cul-de-sac in a quiet upscale neighborhood. He parked, stepped out, and walked away carrying nothing. That was the last confirmed sighting of Steven Koecher. Neighbors later reported seeing him walking calmly down the street, no sign of distress. His car sat untouched for days. Inside were his wrapped Christmas gifts, a laundry basket, and his music CDs. The gas tank was half full. His phone pinged in the area for 2 days, suggesting he stayed nearby, and then went silent. Searches turned up nothing. What makes the Koecher case so strange is that he didn't vanish in the wilderness or storm, but in a suburban neighborhood, in daylight, on camera. There were no signs of foul play, no evidence of suicide, no financial motive. Some speculated he went into the nearby mountains and perished, but his trail stopped within city limits. Even more oddly, investigators found he'd driven thousands of miles in the week before, to Sacramento, Salt Lake City, and back, with no clear reason. Steven Koecher remains missing to this day. His car, still neatly parked, became a symbol of modern disappearances that echo the wilderness mysteries of Missing 411. Proof that you don't have to be deep in the woods to simply vanish. It was Father's Day weekend 1969. The Martin family had been hiking and camping in the Great Smoky Mountains, a vast wilderness straddling the border of Tennessee and North Carolina. Dennis Martin was just 6 years old, a shy but adventurous boy, wearing a bright red t-shirt, shorts, and shoes that were a little too big. The family was joined by another group with children around Dennis's age. They camped at a place called Spence Field, a grassy highland clearing surrounded by thick forest. The kids decided to play a prank. They'd split up, circle the campsite, and jump out to scare the adults. Dennis ran off into the trees and never came back. Minutes later, when the other boys jumped out laughing, Dennis's father, Bill, realized his son wasn't among them. He shouted his name, but there was no reply. Bill sprinted down the trail, certain Dennis must have wandered out of sight. He ran more than 2 miles before stopping. No sound, no movement, nothing but rain beginning to fall. That night, a storm rolled through the mountains. Temperatures dropped. Rain turned to near freezing drizzle. Dennis had vanished, in some of the harshest terrain in the eastern U.S. The next morning, one of the largest search and rescue operations in park history began. Hundreds of park rangers, Green Berets from Fort Bragg, and civilian volunteers scoured the area. They found footprints, small, barefoot tracks leading downhill. But officials dismissed them, assuming they were from another boy. The search lasted weeks. Not a single item of clothing, no trace of a body, not even torn fabric from the bright red shirt ever turned up. To this day, Dennis Martin remains missing. What's strange isn't just the disappearance itself, but the speed and silence with which it happened. Some later claimed to have heard a scream and seen a hairy man-like figure moving through the woods that same afternoon, though that was miles away. Others believe Dennis fell into one of the park's many hidden sinkholes or mine shafts. But after decades, the official record remains blank. No remains, no answers. 4 disappearances. 4 people, 2 named Steven, 2 groups of searchers who never found what they were looking for. Each story different, but each carrying the same question: how does a person just disappear? Maybe there are logical explanations: terrain, weather, panic, human error. Or maybe the answer lies somewhere we haven't yet looked. In a world mapped to the inch, where satellites see every road and camera watches every corner, it's easy to forget how thin the line is between ordinary life and the unknown. Sometimes, the strangest mysteries are the ones that leave no trace at all.